Hello everybody. In this video, we're going to look at computing bias as well as some practice questions on computing bias. Alright, let's get going. Code.org has a widget to show the effects of bias. So if I crop the image here, it looks like a flower. And if I crop the image out here, it looks like leaves or grass. So the idea is, based on what you highlight, you can really change the story that you're telling. So at this point, Code.org has you watch this video about Twitter's cropping algorithm, which is biased towards light-skinned faces and against picking dark-skinned faces. And then Code.org asks the question, which of the following was an unintended effect of the use of the Twitter cropping algorithm? The first three are intended effects. The last one, favoring cropping black faces compared with white faces, is an effect, but it's an unintended effect. So the answer we're looking for here is D. Finally, Code.org asks, based on what you learned about the Twitter cropping algorithm, what are other examples of tasks you think should not be accomplished with algorithms? So the traditional answers here are things like facial recognition, law enforcement, surveillance, defining hate speech. These are things which are found to affect different groups of people differently. And that's what this lesson is about. It's about bias. Now you would definitely get some debate about that, but those are traditional answers for this question. If you're interested in this subject, you can look up algorithmic bias on Wikipedia, where you will find a lot of resources to read about this further. To sum it all up, this is what you need to know for the exam. Bias is when my program or device is prejudiced for or against a group of people. Bias will lead to results that are either inaccurate, incomplete, or unfair. So the AP exam is all about reducing this bias. How? Well, first, we're going to reduce bias in our personnel. AP's answer is always going to be to hire diverse programmers and hire diverse testers. The second way is reducing bias in how these algorithms are trained. So we want diverse data. So we want this data to be diverse with respect to gender and race, but also with respect to money, age, location, and usage patterns. Go with the questions. Question 1. Software Inc. wants to write games. The following would be best to reduce bias. So for reducing bias, remember, we want developer teams to be diverse. Hiring only from the cities is not diverse because it ignores the countryside. Having the most enthusiastic gamers is not diverse because it ignores people who like your product only a little bit or people who you might want to sway to your product. Paying middling rates to your coders doesn't necessarily give your team diversity, but testers from all of the states are geographically diverse. So this helps reduce bias. So your answer is D. Question 2. Which of these would be true about a machine learning algorithm to identify business opportunities? 1. Machine learning is unbiased. If the computer says it's true, then it must be so. As we learned, algorithms can give you results that are inaccurate, incomplete, or unfair. We can't always just take the computer's word for it. So this is false, at least according to the AP board. 2. To reduce bias, developers could train the algorithm with both urban and rural areas. We want to reduce bias, which means we want diverse data to train the algorithms. 2 is diverse with respect to geography. So this is true. 3. If the company only hires software developers who went to elite private colleges, the team would not be diverse enough to write good software it could sell. We know bias leads to results that can be inaccurate, incomplete, or unfair, but it doesn't mean that it can't be done, so this is not true. So only 2 is true, and the answer is B. 3. A person writes software to predict voting with surveys. The following would be best to avoid bias. A. Having friends get their friends to use the software. Remember, to reduce bias, we want diverse pools of data. So friends of friends are likely to be the same people, same type of people, and they will not be diverse. So A is false. B. Have random people at the nicest restaurant in town use the software. Again, we want diverse data, and having data from only the richest people in town is not diverse. So B is false. C. Have people at the best university in town. This is basically the same concept. This will have mostly people who are more educated academically, and that's not really diverse. So C is false. D. Have people who go to the town parade use the software. So in a small town, everybody goes to the town parade, rich, poor, young, old. This is going to be the most diverse data. So our answer is D. 4. A tech company makes a car that drives itself. How can they reduce bias in the product? 1. Place safety as priority number 1. So this is a great goal, probably the best goal, but it's not going to necessarily reduce your bias. To reduce bias, you might say something like, the car shows similar safety across age, socioeconomic, and gender, something like that, but it doesn't say that, so 1 is false. 2. test the products in rural areas as well as urban areas. This reduces bias with respect to geography, so 2 is true. 3, place safeguards so that the president can't steal money. This is a trick question similar to number 1. You could have things that are good, but they aren't necessarily about bias. So it is not the answer we are looking for. So only 2 is true, and the answer is B. Next question. A tech company makes a voice recognition computer product. Which of the following is an example of bias in the product? 1. The product works best when there is not a lot of background noise. So usually when we talk about bias, we're talking about bias against people, so we're not going to count this one. 1 is false. 2. The product works great for people of Ethiopian descent, but poorly for people of Norwegian descent. This is definitely bias. Remember, the definition of bias is that results are inaccurate for a particular group of people, and in this example, the product is biased against Norwegians. Maybe the developers were all Ethiopian, or the system was trained on data from all Ethiopians, but in any case, this is bias. 3. The product does a poor job for old people, but a great job for younger people. This is a more conventional case of bias against older people, as the product is inaccurate for old people, but accurate for younger people. So 3 is true. In the end, 2 and 3 are true, and the answer is D. And question 6. 2 of the following are true. You'll see a bunch of these kind of questions on the exam where you have to select 2 out of 4. A, this is bias. Internet search engine brings up more hits for political candidates who are considered to be attractive. This is definitely bias. This is commonly known as pretty privilege, but is biased for people who are considered to be attractive. So A is definitely bias. B, this is bias. Instagram search does not work as well as Twitter search. So this one's a little bit trickier, but we're going to say it's not bias because neither of these are working in favor or against any groups of people. C, a rideshare service can have bias in both the algorithms used to pick up people and with people who drive cars. So this is true also. The idea is that one product can have multiple biases. In this case, the algorithm has a bias and the people have a bias. Just because you're biased in one way does not mean you can't be also biased in another way. So C is true. D, a program that is biased against young people will probably not be biased against people from Ecuador. So same concepts, you can be biased against multiple people. This might be biased against young people and people from Ecuador. So D is false. So the answer we're looking for is B and D. Question 7. My company wants to have a product without too much bias. Which of the following would not help reduce bias in my product? Not help reduce bias. A, offer money to random customers to help evaluate and test the product. So the randomness here will help be sure that we're not favoring one customer over the other. So A should help reduce bias, and that's not the answer we're looking for. B, hire software developers from all over the United States. So in doing so, we're going to try to reduce the bias associated with geography or a particular university, and this, in theory, should help us reduce bias. C, test my product with data from wealthy and poor cities. So this hopefully obviously helps reduce bias. You're trying to reduce bias that you might have against rich or poor areas. D, implement a best customers program where customers can pay to have a direct hotline to developers. So this might make you money, but for sure, you're going to be biased against people that can pay for this service. So D is not going to help us reduce bias, and therefore that is the answer we are looking for. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Hope that was useful to you. And if it was, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.